let's crack on with it. So as you can see here, my bit is the interviews piece, the techniques and the top tips, and I'm going to talk about preparation for that interview. I'm going to talk about presenting and engaging at the interview, and I'm going to talk about the sort of questions that you might get asked for that. As we're going through these slides, what I'd like you all to do is to actually read the slides. So I'm going to read through some of them, and some of them I'm just going to talk over. And what I'd like to say about this is about preparing for that interview. And now, let me put this to you. Until you actually meet someone in an interview, your CV is you. Now, aside for some covering information from Hayes, your agent, and perhaps unless you've done a video short, which, yeah, is becoming a bit more common these days, that's all most employers and more importantly, most people who are coming along to interview you will have to go on. So until you give them something else in that interview, they are going to ask you about your CV. So know every word on your CV and be ready to explain and evidence everything on your CV. Next thing, know about your audience, not just on their website. Ask your agent, ask your friends, go on a Glassdoor. Know about who is going to turn up to interview you. What is their role? How long have they been at that organization, or indeed how long have they been in that role? And what do the agency know about what they're particularly interested in? And practice. Write it down. Get a friend to ask you some questions. For all I care, sing it out loud with a hairbrush in front of the mirror if you wish, but make sure you practice it. How best to prepare for that practice? Now, hopefully, it'd be interesting to see how this comes across from the recipient side, but hopefully you can start reading through some of the stuff that's on this slide. Now, I want to tell you that these are all genuine excerpts, hopefully not from Mike's company, but from genuine excerpts from actual job descriptions, and I've obviously redacted some of this to make it fit and to remove the names of confidential stuff, from recently advertised junior developer positions through Hayes. Now, just take a moment. Which words are you drawn to on these slides? Just give you 5 or 10 seconds. So here's the same slide. My guess is that a lot of you, you're coming on a junior developer event, so I'm expecting a lot of you are junior developers or aspiring to be junior developers. You're probably drawn to the words that were in white and bold, knowledge of ASP and MySQL and Brilliant Techie and Drupal and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that they're not important, but I'm drawn to the words that are in red. So why am I drawn to those words that are in red? Well, for some simple reasons, really. Firstly, there are probably just as many words in red, well, near enough, as there are in white. I'm going to ask you this. How do you know which aspects of that job description your prospective employer is going to ask you on? Now, you can and you should and talk to and listen to Hayes, your agent. They should have a decent idea. But ultimately, though, you don't know what they're going to ask you. So you need to cover all the bases, white and red, on this screen. But I'm also wondering, because this is the way my brain works, I'm not sure how this is presented to you, but the one in the middle in red, it says firmly established. Hopefully you can all see that in the, hopefully one or two of my colleagues will nod if they can all see that. Jolly good. They can all see the words firmly established market leader. So I'm sitting there and thinking, what is the employer driving at by firmly established? Do they mean they aren't for changing? Or do they mean they're constantly changing? And on my screen, at the bottom right hand, there are some words saying varied projects. So maybe that means you won't see something through. Or maybe it's saying each day is different and exciting. Or on the left-hand one, positive attitude is in there. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean there's lots of pressure, lots of downs? Or does that just mean there's a high energy culture? So what I'm trying to put into your minds here, it's not just preparing your answers based on what's in the job description, it's actually starting to prepare your questions. So I suspect you would want to know whether it's high pressure or high energy, for example, as that word in red that we last just covered came across. How best do you prepare for that interview? So taking a look at this, you may well be able to see some of this, but this is what many people call a job data sheet. And on the left-hand side, there's stuff about the job description. On the right-hand side, hopefully there's some answers. This is one of mine, albeit I've redacted it somewhat. What you need to do is take that job description and dissect it. Take it apart, work through it in detail, and write down where you can evidence against the criteria, and equally where you can't. And if you don't think you can, try and find something that maybe is partially related to it, even if it's not work related. Let's remember here that we're talking about junior developer positions, so that could be somebody that maybe is under 3 years of experience, or it could be somebody that is looking for that very first role. Then have a chat with your agency, have a chat with Hays. They should be prepared, and they are good agents, to coach you on how to get through that interview. You should be prepared to listen to their advice. Now, Mike and myself and Gethin and one or two others on the call, and you all on this call, you are not recruiters, so you don't do this for a living. But Mac and David do. So whoever your agent is, be prepared to listen to what your agent has got to say. So moving on a little bit. How to present at an interview. So we're now on to stage 2. So what do you notice about the people in these pictures? Start having a look at them, please. These are all just everyday photos, stock photos from PowerPoint. Genuinely, all I did was type in the word meetings, and it offered these to select from. So they're not that contrived. They are a bit contrived, but not that contrived. So what do you notice? Maybe it's the numbers of people. Maybe it's the fact that some are in person, and maybe it's the fact that some are via video. Maybe it's just that back in the day, people actually went into offices to do some work. Who knows? Now, I'm going to present the same slide to you again. And I want to ask you now, if you start to look a little bit deeper, do you notice in each one of these pictures the eye contact? Do people look relaxed? Do they look positive? Are they using notes and props? Do they look interested? Are they presentable? Do they look open? Is it friendly? How do they do that? That can be quite daunting for people going into these situations. So firstly, smile. It'll make you feel better. It'll make them feel better, and it'll give you a little bit of confidence. Going back to where I started, preparation. If you want to get your hairbrush out and sing, happy days, crack on, do it. Remember this: you are performing. You are on air. So engage with all of the audience. Now, you'll see there's different a set of dress code in there, but wear what makes you comfortable. Now, for some people, being comfortable, their suit is their armor. For other people, they want to feel relaxed and comfortable in their own skin. Check with Hays, check with your agent before you go into that interview what the dress code is like, and wear something that is appropriate to that situation, and you give yourself some confidence. Ask from the start if they mind whether you are using notes or taking some notes. Use a prop. Now, you can't see, but I've actually got a pen here that I'm using because that's helping me to focus. So use that if you so wish. As you go through, be polite, speak the truth as you see it. If you've done your preparation, then you'll be better able to answer the questions that are a little bit left field because you've already got the answers for the ones that you've already prepared. And try and enjoy it. And in this particular area now, we're going to talk about the types of questions. So more often, have a read through the slide here and the ticks and the crosses, and I'm sure you'll get the general gist. More often than not, and perhaps not exactly how I've written it here, but one way or another, these questions come up typically in most interviews. Now, they aren't going to win you that job, but they could lose you that job. So let's dissect 2 or 3 of them. So, for example, in that first one, tell me something about yourself. For God's sake, don't make it a chronology of everything that you've ever done in your life. It's dull, it's boring, people don't want to know. Keep it fairly succinct. A minute or 2 is absolutely fine for that sort of thing. Now, if there's something in that JD that says something along the lines of teamwork, maybe you need to be saying to them, do you know, I like the camaraderie of being in my sports team or my chess team or whatever, and start to subtly sow those seeds of the linkage between a little bit about yourself and some of those things that they want to see in the JD. In the question that says, you know, what are you looking for, or why are you leaving your last job? Never blame. Never ever blame, and try and relate things to the new role. So maybe if you're leaving a job, it's something along the lines, and perhaps if it's your first job, look, I have enjoyed my first job, but you know, it's time was right to move on, and I wanted to learn something new. That's all you need to say. You don't need to blabber on like I am now about all the, well, I needed to do this and I need to do that and something else was going on and so on and so forth. That will lose you the job, absolutely, you know, well, almost guaranteed. And if you want to say, yeah, I see myself on a beach, or in your job, Mike, or whatever it is as you're going through that interview, know you have the right audience to get away with it. So, for example, it might be okay in the second interview, perhaps with, you know, a bit of humour or maybe with some humility, to say something like, well, actually, I'd like to take on more responsibility. And why would you say that? You know, that's because you might know that Mike is looking for somebody to take on more responsibility 3 or 4 years down the line. So think about that situational context of where things are. Now, rattling through, there are a thing called competencies and values. An organisation often publish their values on websites. They don't often publish their competencies. Start reading through these slides, as you can see. And there's words like respect and business focus and how do you seek feedback and teamwork and all those kind of things. Again, these are genuine excerpts from actual employers' competency and value guides, and they're all from this part of the world. You can't have them because they're all mine, but they're in different sectors. And I have altered some of the words just for ease of use of getting them on the slide, but essentially the meaning is there. First thing I want to draw your attention to is this. There's nothing in any of these guides about tech. And that's because most employers have generic competency guides covering all of the roles in their organization. So you need to make sure that you know how to handle you know, those sorts of wider questions. Find out from Hays whether the interview is likely to contain competency questions or not. And if it's your first job, ask them to find out what the expectation from the employer is on how they anticipate someone with no or little experience should answer a competency-based question. Again, I'll repeat, a good agent should know the answers to these sorts of things, or at the very least be prepared to find out. Now, looking at the words in blue here, you need to clock what somebody is asking you. It's saying, how did you ensure? What techniques did you use? Give me an example. And there's a real way of answering these questions, and it's called the STAR technique. So that's what you can see on the right-hand side of that screen. So where it says, give me an example of where you maintain motivation and focus, blah, 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 describe the situation and the task that was ongoing, what actions you took and what results you got. And if you can't remember what that means, remember STAR, and hopefully you'll come through from that. Now, you do need to prep for these, and moving on to that, because most people look for things like you know, teamwork and respect and so on and so forth. And so one way to prep for this, exactly like the job data sheet, is to do a top 10 competency answers sheet. There's a few in here which are a little bit different from the ones on the previous slide, like dealing with ambiguity and what happens if something didn't go well the first time round, etc., etc. But write them down and think through the answers. That's what gives you your confidence. What we've covered about preparation for that interview. So that was, you know, looking at your job data sheet, knowing what the questions were that you might get asked about, knowing your CV. We've looked at presenting. That's about looking at everybody around there. It's about smiling. It's about being relaxed. It's about understanding the dress code in there. And we've looked at a few of the common questions. Some of those that you don't need to get wrong, which are the tell me about yourself type questions, and some of those that preferably you do need to get right, like the competency questions of, you know, what did you do to handle a difficult stakeholder, or whatever that question might be.